Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thursday Thyroid Talks, my brilliant and beautiful friends all over the globe. My name is Sarah Lohman, and I am a certified transformational nutrition coach. And thanks to my 10 years of illness from thyroid disease that I have been able to put into remission, I am now a holistic root cause coach for women battling thyroid illness as well. My focus is to figure out your root causes for your symptoms so I can help you restore your energy, gain emotional and spiritual peace, learn how to eat properly, lose weight, and rewrite your happiness story. It is my intention to use this podcast platform to empower and educate thyroid warriors against the mainstream ideas of what thyroid disease is, and to help combat feelings of confusion, isolation, and loneliness. Plus, provide the truth behind why you're sick and suffering, and more importantly, what you can do to help yourself. Thank you so much for being here, either live or on the replay. And I have a fantastic guest for you guys today. Her name is Sarah Kneebone. So Sarah is a certified holistic health coach and breathwork facilitator. Sarah combines dietary and lifestyle optimization with deep emotional healing practices to help busy, tired women overcome the root cause of their Hashimoto symptoms, reignite their energy, and get the zest for their life back. After being hospitalized with sepsis and diagnosed with autoimmune thyroiditis or Hashimoto's, Sarah realized that her unsustainably fast-paced lifestyle and unprocessed trauma needed to be resolved. Sarah began a transformative healing journey that led to the remission of her condition and a career change from marketing manager to a holistic health coach. Mojo Health Space was born out of a deep desire to help others get their mojo back. And Sarah now dedicates her life to supporting women one-on-one through her one-on-one coaching. And she also has a podcast that you guys can check out as well called More Mojo. And she has her signature coaching course called I've Got Hashimoto's, Now What? So let's put your hands up, everyone, for Sarah. I see you, Sarah. I'm bringing you on. Hi, Ada. Thank you for being here. All right, here she comes. Any second now. You got to send me a request to join. Let me see if I can send you one. No, I can't. There it is. I got it. I did click it. Oh, there it is. Hello, Sarah. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So you have quite the interesting backstory. I can't wait to hear more about it. The whole sepsis and hospitalization, I was like, whoa, that's an interesting story. Actually, I haven't heard of anyone that went through a sepsis situation. So why don't you start from the beginning and tell us a summary of everything you went through, your Hashimoto's diagnosis, and how you became a coach now?
Yeah, so I think everyone's Hashi story is complicated. It's just whether you kind of put the pieces together. With any chronic condition, there's usually a multitude of reasons behind it. I grew up thinking I was pretty healthy. I was like proud of the fact I'd never broken a bone and I never got sick. And then there was kind of a turning point where I had a kind of season of just typical teenager, like partying really hard, drinking a lot, eating a lot, including like all the things I know now don't work with my body. And also just going into the corporate world and working a really, really stressful job or a series of jobs. And I also moved to Australia from England, went through a big breakup, and just a whole lot of stuff happened at once. And I basically was just really, really disconnected from my body. So I was working really hard, working weekends, working nights, for this boss that didn't appreciate me at all. But back then I was, I'm a recovering people pleaser. I think a lot of us are.
Good for you. Good for
Yeah.
you.
And I had no boundaries, I was just a yes girl. I would do anything anyone wanted and like morph myself to have people love me and like me. And because my sense of self, my self-worth was so low at this point. And so when I got symptoms of a UTI, I didn't even notice them at all until they spread to my kidneys. And I just felt a bit faint, a bit lightheaded, a bit low energy. I remember I was trying to move house with my boyfriend at the time, and he was like, "Why aren't you helping?" And I was just like, "I'm so tired." I think he just thought I was being lazy. But I was like, I cannot get off the floor. And then I remember I walked to a pharmacy to go and see if I could get some sort of painkiller or something. And I had to lie down on a bench halfway there, and it was a 5-minute walk. And at that point I was kind of like, yeah, this isn't normal. Went to the hospital, and they were basically like, you had a kidney infection, but it spread to your blood. And so you have blood poisoning. And I quickly Googled it, and it was like 1 in 3 people die. And I was like, wow, how did I barely notice that this was happening to me? The first call I made was to my boss. That was another big red flag. Like, I was meant to be hosting an event that weekend, and I called him to say, I'm still going to come. I'm going to come on my drip, because I was on an antibiotic drip. Yeah. I was like, I'm going to get permission from the nurse, and I'm going to come on my drip. Like, I was delirious. And then I spent a whole week on a drip in hospital, spent another week at home in bed, more antibiotics. And like, as you well know, antibiotics, gut health don't go well together, and all the stress of the situation. And then I just kept getting ill. Like, after that, I was getting bronchitis, I was getting yeast infections and UTIs, and just getting sick so easily. And I was going back to the doctors and being like, why is this happening? Like, I never used to have this happen. And they were just telling me the classic, it's women's problems. Women just get these kind of infections. Just keep taking some more antibiotics. And after about, I don't know, 6 months to a year of that, I was like, I just can't put up with this anymore. So I'm going to have to work it out myself. And I just dove into, I wasn't into holistic health at all. I was a party girl. I just used to eat pizza at 3 a.m. and drink a lot of wine. And then I was like diving into holistic health, listening to all these podcasts. And I listened to a podcast with a woman who had Hashimotos. I mean, what are the chances of that? Like, I feel like the universe threw me a lifeline there. And I was just like, I resonate with everything they're saying so much. So I went to the doctors and requested a blood test for the antibodies, because fortunately I had that knowledge from the podcast that you need to get the antibodies tested too. I know a lot of people listening might have only had their TSH tested, but yeah, they came back positive. So I got my diagnosis, and that was really the start of everything. But I remember I was only 24 years old, and just thinking, like, just bursting into tears, running outside, all these people staring at me. I remember there was these construction workers looking at me, and I'm just like in floods of tears. Because the doctor said all the stuff that everyone's heard, that, you're never going to heal this. There's nothing you can do. It's only going to get worse. Just all of these negative, disempowering statements. And like, sorry,
it's that damn like doomsday story. Yeah.
And at 24, I mean, no one ever wants to hear that, but
that is so young. Wow.
Yeah. So then I had my moment of wallowing and being angry and having to go through all those emotions, feeling like it wasn't fair. I was too young and I didn't deserve this, and looking at people in the street that were doing things that I considered unhealthy. Like, I'd see someone smoking and I'd be like, why aren't they ill? Why am I ill? And then I hired a naturopath. I think that was the first positive step I took. Once I'd gone through, like dwelling on it and then getting to the other side and being like, well, I'm the only person that's going to help me in this situation, because the conventional medical system won't. And so what can I do? And the first person I hired was a naturopath, and she was incredible. And she was also a listening ear. And I think she didn't even realize, so like, that a big part of her role was that like, she was actually willing to hear me out and not minimize what I was going through. So yeah, we started on like gut health, you know, testing for parasites and the dysbiosis that I had and candida. And she told me that I had the worst gut like stool sample that they'd ever seen.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Which I had
But
retaken like a year ago, and they said it was one of the best they'd ever seen. So I was like, okay, things can change.
uh-huh. But you know, because I tell my clients this all the time, I'm like, it's okay that it's terrible because now we have a baseline of where to start and we can watch it progress. So it's okay.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
what I say with everything with Hashimoto's, like, you know, we're going to talk about root causes and things. So we're going to too much depth. But obviously with that, it can be like, oh my God, there's all these things that could be wrong. Like you can take it like that, or you can take it like, oh, there's all these things that I can actually look into. And every time I address one of them, I'm going to get closer to the kind of health that I want, and probably better health than you had before once you've got this mentality. So
Exactly. Wow. Yeah. So that, it's interesting to hear because so when you went through all this, you said you were in Australia.
mm-hmm.
Okay. So obviously I'm in the States, been here my whole life. So I'm like, so this is just like the rhetoric worldwide.
Yeah.
It's just gaslight, blame the women, no answers. All right. Well, I mean, that's why we're here, right? That's why
Yeah.
we do what we do.
And it's the same in the UK as well, you know, having come from there and
Ugh.
then going back since, you know, I'm sure anyone watching that's from any of those places will second that.
Yeah, that's too bad. Well, yeah, it's don't believe them. I
Exactly.
love that. So I'm glad you got I find everything like what you said where you're looking around at everyone and you're like, "Ugh, why aren't they sick?" And um there's a silver lining, to everyone's trials. And I mean, look at the the sudden change in your life and your health that you had at such a young age, and now what a powerful path you're on to help other women. And so I do know that when we get our diagnosis, we do go through those like grieving stages and the pity parties and like, oh, poor me, what am I going to do? But I love that you just like empowered yourself right out of it,
Mm.
and started finding all of the things to work on. So let's dive into that.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about some root causes of Hashimoto's because I think that's what everyone wants to know. So,
Mhm.
um, I know there's multiple, so I'm just gonna like leave it general for you. Like, what do you think are some root causes of Hashimoto's?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like there are a lot, but I don't want people listening to feel overwhelmed by that. Just see it as like these
Mm-hmm.
are all opportunities, something you could look into, and it could completely change your life. Like, you know, with celiac, it's a bit easier. It's like remove the gluten, remove the problem. With Hashimoto's, there's a lot more. So for me, like the first ones I realized were like parasites, like I said, the dysbiosis in my gut, leaky gut, because obviously that's a precursor to autoimmunity. So for anyone listening who doesn't know, like you have to have leaky gut for autoimmunity to perpetuate. So um, if you have an autoimmune condition, you have gut issues. So definitely look into that. And like, you know, just recorrecting the balance, like getting rid of the bad guys, putting some more good guys in. um, and also like infections. So a lot of people find that they had EBV or that they've got yeast infections. Like there's obviously different types of infections that you can have, but it's when the bad guys are overrunning the show inside, basically.
Yeah.
And then I know Emily Kibbard was on a second ago watching, but she had mold issues. Like mold is a huge one as well. Um, Basically anything that's getting into your body and like causing destruction. And then once you know, while we're still talking about gut, obviously like if your gut health isn't good, then you're going to end up with nutrient deficiencies. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people with Hashimoto's find that they're reactive to a lot of foods. And another thing I try and tell people is like, you're not always going to be that way. It's just right now, because your gut health isn't good, you are reacting to so many foods. And that's where like the autoimmune protocol comes in, or other kind of healing diets, to figure out like, A, what is irritating your system, and B, how can we nourish your system more? to replace some of these nutrients that you've lost. And like, I know you know this, but you know, there's so much connection between things with Hashis. Like, you know, you are chronically stressed because you have trauma. So that means now your adrenals are all over the shop and you're not absorbing your food properly. So now you've got nutrient deficiencies, and now your different organs can't process what they need to do, or your detox organs aren't working properly. So it kind of all has like a cascading effect. And I think that's why it's important to understand that, like, it's not the candida, like the candida is not wrecking your life, but the candida is there because of these other imbalances. So it's about kind of, I like talking about it like a puzzle, and you've got these different puzzle pieces that are relevant for you. And then as you put them together, suddenly it all just comes together and you're like, oh, like I don't have any of these problems anymore. I don't have any of these symptoms anymore. And you can pull back on all the kind of extreme stuff you feel you've had to do, like, you know, really strongly eliminating certain foods, because your body's back in a place of balance, and so it can tolerate stuff. And so, like, I always try and talk about the way I live now. I barely even remember that I have Hashimoto's because I don't have symptoms from it. I don't have antibodies, my levels are good, and like, you wouldn't know I had it. But then a few years ago, it was running my life, and all the difference has been is me just being like, why is this happening? And then addressing those problems. Sounds simple, but
Yeah, I mean, first of all, you have to get with someone who can help you figure out the deeper questions, like you said, the whys,
because
you
some of
know?
them are emotional and some of them are physical. Like,
Mm-hmm.
for some of them, you're not going to know if you've got a mold problem unless you go maybe speak to a functional medicine doctor and get that testing done, or whoever can do
Mm-hmm.
it. So it's definitely about like empowering yourself with education, but also not, because I know a lot of people with Hashis, I talk about like a personality type that is a result of trauma, but a lot of us have like this type A, perfectionism, people pleasing, low self-worth, like overworking, overgiving. And that's a lot of the reason why we're burnt out. But we don't want to accept help. Like, I know I was like that. I was like, well, I'm going to do this myself. And it's like, this is one of those things where it's so important to ask for help, because you can Google stuff, but putting it together and having it personalized and getting the tests and having the emotional support, like, they're the things that will actually make the transformation.
Absolutely. And like you said, the personalized, tailored to you individual answers, protocols, and then like you said, the attention, motivation, support, and education. It's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's I always say, like, if I would have known, I didn't even know coaches existed when I was sick. Like, I didn't know that was a thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like, had I have known that there was women like us out there that can do all these things, I would have jumped on it in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
you know, because trying to do it yourself and figure out all your root cause factors yourself, when you're in that state of like, I don't feel good, I'm depleted, and it's just too overwhelming to even think about,
Mm.
it's like you want to give up before you even begin, you know?
Yeah.
And you need
Yeah.
someone to show you and help you. Yeah.
I think especially if they've been through it before, like, that's something that, because it can feel so isolating, or like nobody else understands. And especially when you speak to a whole load of doctors that have just said that kind of stuff, like it's women's problems,
Yeah.
or like they've just shoved you off. And I'm not like like bashing all doctors, but the conventional medical system in general just doesn't understand chronic conditions very well. And so when you're in that state, like you said, of like overwhelm, confusion, low self-esteem, fatigue, like brain fog, it's hard to go to those sessions and not come out and just feel like, wow, there's nothing I can do. Like, it's, you feel so defeated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
so
Like you,
grateful for like functional and holistic medicine. Like, it's amazing.
I know, right? It really is. I mean, it goes that layer deeper, but personally for me, like, um, I hired tons of them. I think I went through 4 or 6, you know, it was like I was able to get the deeper answers, but like you just said, they didn't ever put together the
Yeah.
like personalized protocols. Like they could just be like, "Oh, you have EBV." It's like, okay, well, what am I supposed to do with that education? What am I supposed to do with that? You know, it's like they're not going to start you on an antiviral protocol. you know? So yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
or
they
they
have
don't
their,
like do the conversation in between and like the support in
hmm
between or answering your questions. I've done that before. I hired a really expensive functional dog, and it was like you're not allowed to talk to me in between appointments, and then the appointment's like really expensive anyway, and then I'm like, well, I don't
hmm
know what to do with any of what you've said.
yeah, yeah. So it's like we need to start your morning routine, your schedule, and all the things that like make it happen, you know, make the transformation happen.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so like you said, the gut dysbiosis, the low nutrients that go into the inability to digest your food properly, the poor gut health that goes into the inability to absorb any like what you are eating,
Yeah.
um, and then the bad guys that are overgrowing because you don't have enough of the good guys, to put it simply. Yeah, so true. So many of the root causes right there. And then the mindset, the emotional aspect of it, and the trauma. So let's talk about the trauma a little bit, because
This
this
is like
isn't,
my obsession.
is it?
Yeah. This
That's
is all I talk
awesome.
about. Like if you go through my feeds on my posts on my feed, like I rarely ever talk about the rest of it because I'm just so passionate about the trauma side of it.
Yeah, it's a big component. So tell me about your trauma story and all your healing around that.
Yeah, so for me, I got to a good level and I did actually get into remission without doing a huge amount of that work. I'd been to see energy healers and done Reiki, and so I was into it, but I still hadn't really reflected properly. I more did it because I was like, I'm in Bali, I'm going to go see a Reiki healer.
Cool.
And then I had my son, and obviously like postpartum throws everything up again, and I had a lot of anxiety and depression. Like I really struggled. It was in the COVID lockdown period. I literally had him 2 weeks before the lockdown. um,
Oh,
we just moved countries, we didn't know anybody, and it was just me and my other half just doing it all on our own, and it was really hard, and I was breastfeeding and co-sleeping, and I just had no space for my baby. And that sounds
mm-hmm.
like a horrible thing to say, but when you are already dealing with a chronic condition, and then someone is depleting you because he was physically from breastfeeding, and then on you and emotionally draining, like that was like, oh, now I can't do my perfect morning routine, and I got, like I had all these things in
Mm-hmm.
place to keep everything together, and then it was
Mm-hmm.
suddenly like all of that is thrown. I don't have any time to look after myself. Like I'm
Yep.
not feeding myself as best as I could. I'm not meditating twice a day for 20 minutes. And it was like, oh, this is how you do hashies with like family life. Like that's even harder.
Mm-hmm.
um, and then I got into like Psych K therapy, which is a type of counseling that involves the kind of more like spiritual side of it. And then I got into breath work. So I trained to be a breathwork facilitator after only having done a few sessions, because I was just like, wow, this is so powerful. And I learned
Mm-hmm.
about the nervous system and the fact that if your nervous system isn't stable and constantly in fight or flight, you literally can't heal. So like your body
Mm-hmm.
has two modes: rest, digest, and heal, and fight, flight, freeze, fawn, which is panic mode. It's survival mode. And it's what a lot
Mm-hmm.
of us are living in all the time. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's that like shallow chest breathing and like rushing through your day to do your to-do list, and then beating yourself up at night because you haven't done your to-do list. And like all what I was talking about earlier about that low self-worth and overgiving and overworking, like that comes from a place of trauma, whether you remember it or not,
Mm-hmm.
and whether you would count it or not. Because a lot of people think, right, well, I wasn't physically abused as a child, so like I don't have trauma. When actually, like, there's big T trauma and little t trauma. We're all traumatized in different ways. And a lot of us with Hashimoto's have been through a lot. Like if you reflect back on your past, and that's why you have those responses, because you never were made to feel you were good enough potentially by your caregivers, or maybe they were really focused on academic achievement, and so you thought you had to do XYZ to be good enough rather than just being good enough for who you are. Or it could be bullying, or it could be abusive relationships, it could be divorce, it could be car crashes. Like there's so many little
Yep.
things in life that we go through that are adding up in our system, and we're not processing them because our society is just like, but just keep working more and like, you know, smash things out, achieve all the things. And it adds up to the point where our body can't do it anymore. And, you know, a lot of people with Hashis experience burnout because of this, and flare ups because of this, or maybe even your Hashimoto started because of this. And so I quickly realized that I wasn't going to be able to get back under control with Hashimoto's after having Jax unless I dealt with this stuff, unless I did somatic healing modalities that incorporated the body rather than just trying to like talk through my problems and move through that emotion and shift the trauma and all the stuck emotion out of my body so that I could be in that parasympathetic state during the day, you know, calm, grounded, an increased capacity to tolerate stress. Because I hate when people are just like, you know, talking about eliminating stress, because it's not possible, but it's more about like, in nervous system talk, it's increasing your capacity to cope with stresses in life and come back to your baseline quicker. And your baseline is rest, digest, and heal. So like the more time you can spend there, the more likely you are to get into remission and heal Hashimoto's.
I love that so much. Yeah. I can directly, hi everyone, thank you for being here. I can directly relate my Hashimoto's to my marriage, the marriage I was in. It was a very abusive marriage. I think it was, I just recently, like in the past few months, started learning about narcissists, like totally, because I have a friend who's training to be a narcissist coach, and so she teaches me everything. Yeah, and so I'm like, I've been reflecting, like, oh my gosh, I think that's what I was married to, and I got so sick from the stress of that marriage, and I have had a lot of women say that to me as well, that, you know, they got sick from their relationship and the trauma and the stress and the constant fight or flight, you know, and yeah, so it can be, you know, like you said, multiple traumas from your childhood or from something you're currently in, like you said, your relationship. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because
the
for
other thing
me,
is that links to the other things. So I did a post about weight loss the other day, because I don't talk about weight loss. I don't think it's something we should focus on, even though obviously it's one of the, you know, most significant symptoms of low thyroid, right? But I don't focus on it. I think it can be you deal with your weight loss as a side effect of dealing with the other stuff. But so much stuff is stress, because if you think about it, like as women, we've been taught to believe that we're not good enough unless we're thin, and we focus on our, you know, appearance. And that's why we're obsessed with our weight. But if you are stressed, then you're inflamed, then your adrenals are all over the shop, then your body is like clinging on to weight because of that. You know, the other thing is we start thinking, right, well, I'm overweight, so I need to like exercise harder and starve myself and punish myself more. And all of that comes from the trauma too, you know, like that I'm not good enough, so I need to fix me. And that means shrinking me, depriving myself instead of nourishing myself, beating myself up with HIIT workouts that just ruin my hormones. And realizing that often stress and trauma is at the root of all of this. And once that goes away and our body can feel calm and all the systems can operate and talk to each other properly and our detox organs work properly, the weight will come off naturally. You know?
So I heard about, when I was studying the adrenals, I had it like an analogy like this, and it just stayed with me. So I wonder if you have like the aha moment from it too. It's like, imagine your adrenals are just like pumping, just constantly pumping, and they're pumping out basically like an acid that's not good for you. And so where does that acid go? Well, it absorbs, your liver absorbs it, right? So basically it's like, imagine your liver's being scorched and like hurt. And so then your liver, because it's being burnt and scorched, it can't function the way it's supposed to, which is one of the main mechanisms you need in order to be able to lose weight, right? Like a healthy, thriving liver. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. you know?
Mhm.
And so, like you said, if you can kick your adrenals and your nervous system out of the constant fight, flight, or freeze, I actually haven't heard the freeze part, but that's so true. Yeah, imagine like just everything gets lighter and your body can just like breathe and have room to like do what it needs to do and function properly.
Yeah, because then
Mm,
you don't have like blood sugar. Like everyone looks, you're looking at the symptoms rather than the root. Again, it like comes back to the root cause, and I think this is why stress and trauma is often the root underneath these symptoms.
yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
like blood sugar imbalances or hormonal imbalances, and even stuff like your T4 to T3 conversion. Like a lot of people
Yep.
struggle with that. For people listening that don't know, like T3 is the active thyroid hormone. So you could be taking T4 till the cows come home, and if your body's not converting it, then you still aren't gonna feel good, and your ranges aren't gonna get better. And like you need good T4 to T3 conversion for your metabolism to function properly. So people are like, right, well, that's the problem. And it's like, actually, is this process not happening because your body is under stress? And so the processes aren't working. So there's so many things like that where it's like we need to go one layer deeper.
And
And
that's, oh, so I was going to say, and that ties it all back to the root causes of the gut dysbiosis, the liver, the detox pathways not open and sluggish and toxic. And I love everything you're saying. It's that cascade you said earlier.
yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it sounds complicated, but I just think like I try and advise people just like one step at a time,
Yeah.
Like this didn't happen to you like wham bam. You didn't just like wake up
Yeah.
one day and have it. Like it's been happening over years. And so each little thing you can do, like one more layer, one more layer, one more layer, and then you will wake up and be like, oh, kind of forgot that I have it today. Like it wasn't on my
Mm.
mind all day, or like I had the energy to do XYZ today.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like layering the daily
Yeah.
habit and the shifts.
Yeah, yeah. But the trauma aspect, the trauma piece of it is really important. I too had to work with a Reiki master to be able to because I never processed my dad's death. I realized it was just stored in me. I just pushed it away and ignored it like it never happened. And then when my brother was shot and killed, like all my dad's death came out in me too. And now I was grieving both of them at the same time. Plus, I had to go through and process and release all the trauma from my marriage. And so it was just like, holy crap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And why do you think
So
you have to do that on your own? Like for some reason you do. You're just like,
we
I've
don't
got to
know.
get on with it. It's like,
Yeah. I couldn't have done that on my own. I had to seek help for that because it was so overwhelming and it was like all I could think about. And, energy healers really know that's what they do. They help you release. Um, so I'm glad that you had to go through that as well because that's an underlying factor that I almost everyone I talk to, there's a trauma piece. It comes out in our conversations that
yeah, I
has to
feel
be
like
addressed.
something that annoys me about the industry in general is people will either not even mention it or they will just talk about it in such a like, oh, mindset, stress management, like just go meditate, like surface level. And there's just not enough.
Hmm.
Like that's not enough to make a difference. And so people think they're ticking the box by just like meditating a little bit or whatever, and like it's usually so much deeper, which is not something that everybody wants to face. Like it's heavy
Yeah.
to face, but it's just so empowering because you end up coming back to you again. Like I feel like I found this version of myself that never would have come out if I didn't have Hashimoto's. I was so insecure. I used to just mold myself to be whatever I thought other people wanted me to be. I wanted everyone to like me. Like I just did what the job that I thought my parents would want, all of this shit. And then when I did all this emotional healing stuff, and particularly with the breath work and the like body based healing where you don't have to remember stuff and talk through stuff, like it's done through your body, it's so powerful. And then you end
Hmm.
up coming back to you. Like I just feel like I'm the most confident, happy, like energetic version of myself I've ever been, and it's from having had to go through all this shit.
I love that. I love that so much because and that is the outcome that everyone can get once you decide
Yeah.
to first, you have to decide to put yourself first, and I love, I want to touch on the piece that you said about being a new mom and completely losing yourself. Um, I was very, very sick when I had my daughter, and same thing. It was like the fatigue, I called it, the hypo drag, on
Mm.
top of the nursing, on top of the fatigue from not sleeping, the co-sleeping, everything. It was like, I thought I was going to die. I just, and like you said, and I want you to know that it's okay to want and need space from your baby. Like, that's okay. Like, we need to step away from our children. And this is one of the things, because I have an 18-year-old. I'm 42, so I've been momming a long time now.
You've made it
And
out the other side.
yeah, and I can tell you from my own mothering, I was never taught, we are not taught that it's okay to step away from your family and do daily grounding practices that you need to do, whatever that may be. Going to the gym, going for a walk, journaling, going in, listening to some music or a podcast and taking some deep breaths while you sit under a tree, anything that feels good for you. We feel like we have to just be there constantly, and it depletes us in every freaking way possible. And then we end up a shell of a person. We don't know who we are. And then we really start getting sick or sicker.
Mm.
And that is something that everyone needs to really chew on. Like, it's not just, I feel like it's deeper than the message of like self-care. It is like,
Yeah.
you have to do this,
Yeah,
you,
definitely. That's another one of those concepts, I think, self-care, that's just a bit light and people just throw it around, and it's like so much deeper and more meaningful than that. And but like, even, at this point I had trained to be a health coach. I was educated on this stuff, and I still lost myself for a good year. Like, that first year was just a mess. And obviously it was COVID as well, it was really weird times for everyone. But that's, again, I think, why you do have to try and get support, and it has to be in multiple facets. Like, at different
mm-hmm.
times in your journey, you might need different people. Like, for example, I said my naturopath, but then at another time it could be a coach, it could be a different kind of doctor, but it also needs to be like community, like Instagram with other women who know what you're going through, or other mums, or like just always reaching out rather than just staying in your own head
Yeah.
and letting it escalate.
Absolutely. Yeah, the loneliness and the isolation is enough right there to make you super sick.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Well, they talked about that in the blue zones, didn't they? Like, everyone knows about the blue zone diets, like the Mediterranean stuff, where everyone thinks, right, it's because they eat so much like oil and fish, and it's actually the biggest reason is that they live the longest in the world is because they have such strong community. They go for big walks together every day. They have big meals together every day. Like, they can rely on each other. And our society, like America, England, Australia, is very individualistic. Moms are just left to manage everything on their own, but they also should work. And they don't have their like village and everything. And then you add chronic illness into that, it's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it's a disaster pants
But then you're still
everywhere.
hard on yourself. You're still like, oh, it's my fault,
Yeah.
I'm not good enough, and like all the guilt comes on. It's just crazy.
Yeah. And it's not true. Everyone is doing the best they can to the best of their capabilities. And, that's all we can do is the best we can do.
Yeah,
And
I literally shared that on my stories today because I was like, I need this reminder.
yeah. Yeah. Well, for you and every other new mom, young mom out there, overwhelmed mom, I just want you guys to know that you are kicking butt and you're doing good. And you're doing the best you can, and don't beat yourselves up. It's not worth it. It's not
Yeah.
worth it.
And the more you
So
invest in yourself as well, the more you'll be able to give back to your kids anyway. Like, when you have a little break from them,
yes.
or when you, like, for
Yeah.
example, go to therapy or invest in a coach or do a course, whatever it is, to like better yourself, then you're going to be able to show up better anyway. So it's a good cycle.
Yeah. When you're away for it's when you're away for those little bits, like I literally would just walk out my door and I found a grassy spot in my neighborhood that had a beautiful tree, and I would put some healing tones on, like 432 hertz, or just something very peaceful to listen to. And I would just simply sit. It was my practice. After I stopped work, I would go sit and either, depending on the time of year, I'd watch the sunset, or I would just be. I would just be there. I would have my shoes off. I would be comfortable, enjoying the breeze, and I would just chill for 20 minutes. For 20 minutes, and then it was like I'd go back, and it helped me, honestly, it helped me decompress from work too, and shift out of work mode and more into like, okay, now it's dinner time, be with the family. And it helps with that transition as well, but it also fills your cup back up so you can go back and cook dinner and and be with everyone and homework or whatever it is that you got to do, playtimes, reading, all the stuff. So it very much helps, and I encourage anyone listening, to try that.
And also, I think kids help you be more playful, and being playful is very, very healing. Just being present in that moment, being joyful, not multitasking, and just the way that kids are just, you can learn so much from kids, like their boundaries, all of that kind of stuff. I'm just like watching my toddler stand up to me, and I'm like, do you know what? I'm proud of you.
That's cute. That's actually true. Once I started recovering my energy and I could feel like I was a mom again, I started doing like handstands and like being involved in the play, and it really made me feel happier. And like you said, it's so healing to be more playful and get down to their level. It really is, like, when you can handle it, it feels really good. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I enjoyed our conversation.
Me too. Thanks for having me. And thanks to everyone who joined.
Yes. So why don't you tell everyone where they can find you and all of your awesome stuff?
Yeah. So my handle is @Mojo Health Space, and I'm mainly on there. I do have a TikTok, but I'm not really into that yet. All my links are on my Instagram. So there's a link to a freebie you can download about meal prepping and budgeting with the AIP diet with Hashimoto's. I have a podcast, the More Mojo podcast, which is linked, but you can just search that anywhere. And that's just sharing stories of women who have overcome big obstacles in life. Sarah's on it soon. And to get their mojo back. Like, this one page is about all about getting your mojo and your zest for life back. And then there's also a link to my course. I've got Hashimoto's Now What, which is a 6-week blueprint basically of how to heal Hashimoto's, like what it is, why it happens, how to build a support team, and then how to optimize your diet and lifestyle, and also the emotional side of things that we talked about. There's breathwork videos in there and all about the nervous system too. So it really just gives you that jumping off point, so you don't have to Google everything. It's all in one place. And I also do one-to-one coaching and breathwork sessions. Like I said, if you want to personalize that experience, then you can do too. So all the links are on my Instagram. It's probably the best place to go.
Awesome. You guys, go get her freebie. It sounds great. Go check out all of her stuff. It's amazing. She's amazing. And I know you're in good hands when you work with her. So yeah, thank you again. And, I just want to say that I absolutely love your name, the Mojo. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been told this, but it reminds me of the Austin Powers movies.
No, I haven't, but I love that.
Because he's like trying to get his mojo back. It's so cute. I love that series. So yeah, it's cute. All right. Well, sorry everyone that's just jumping on. We are wrapping it up. So you can check out the replay. I'm going to post it in a few minutes, and then it's also going to be live on my YouTube page, and then it'll also be in the audio format on Spotify and Apple Podcasts in the next week. So thanks again, everyone, and I'll talk to you soon.
Love. Bye.
Bye.